Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are HangingOnToHope.org.
This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given. Okay, well, welcome to the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Karen W. Today, we welcome back Sarah Mcdugal. Sarah is an advocate and co-founder of Wilderness to Wild and the Trauma Mamas mobile app. She's an author, coach, survivor, and trauma mama. Sarah was on podcast number 112 on the 4 seasons of healing. So welcome back to the show, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, we are glad to have you here.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you back.
So we've not done a podcast specifically on gaslighting. I think we've talked about it a little bit, but we wanted to really have a whole podcast to talk about it. It's just such a big part of destructive and abusive relationships. Anyone can gaslight you, but our main focus is on gaslighting in intimate relationships. So we're just going to start out if you wanted to kind of define the term gaslighting for us.
Sure. So gaslighting is a term for crazy making. Mm-hmm. That's my favorite synonym.
Yeah.
Where a person uses their influence, their words, their actions to make you second guess your sanity, to make you doubt what you know to be real and true. For example, let's say you're on a walk and your partner says, man, that purple sky is just so cool. And you look up and it's a vibrant blue and you're like, huh? And you're like, the sky's not purple, it's blue. And they say, no, it's not. That's purple. And you're like, no, that's blue. And they kind of chuckle condescendingly. And they say, no, sweetie, honey, everyone else knows you're colorblind. We all have a good laugh. This is why everyone laughs when you leave the room and you've commented on anybody's clothes, because we all know you can't tell colors. But nobody wants to hurt your feelings. And I'm the only one who'll tell you the truth. But that's actually really purple. And you're sitting there scratching your head going, wait a second, do I need to see the eye doctor?
Yeah.
And have I thought that purple is actually pale blue my whole life? What? Am I crazy? I thought this was blue. I thought everyone thought it was blue. Oh my goodness, all my friends are laughing at me behind my back. Nobody wants to tell me this truth. Everybody knows that I can't see purple, that I call purple blue. How many times have I made that mistake in front of everyone I know? Oh my goodness. And now you're not thinking at all about the fact that they just lied to you. You are second guessing every past experience where you may or may not have publicly humiliated yourself because of this twisted information they just gave you.
Mm.
So then you have the result of that. Gaslighting is powerful because it creates the space for the tools of abuse. There are 4 tools of abuse. This is from the 4 tools framework that originates from Psalm 82 Initiative. I don't know if have you ever had Psalm 82 Initiative?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Early on we did, yeah.
Yeah. So Tom Pride over at Psalm 82 Initiative, and he now works with Banner Institute as well, talks about the 4 tools of abuse, and they are isolation and deflection, manipulation, and intimidation. Well, you can see all of those in the story that I just shared. Mm-hmm. Because as soon as you realize that all your friends chuckle when you leave, or you begin to think, maybe not realize because it may not actually be happening, but as soon as you believe that all your friends laugh at you for what you're being told is your mistake, well, you now feel like none of your friends want to tell you the truth. And so they're not real friends. And you've humiliated yourself in front of these friends. So now you're isolating yourself. And the abuser has deftly managed to get you to isolate yourself. They're not saying you can't hang out with those people. They just created this illusion that you humiliated yourself around these people so much.
Yeah.
And now you don't want to be around them because now it feels humiliating to just be in their presence. So maybe the next time they call you for girls' night, you're like, nah, I'm going to go to bed early tonight. And you isolate yourself. But the abuser is the one who managed to do that. They pulled the puppet strings.
Yeah.
To create that situation. And then when you're like, that's blue. Well, then you see the deflection. No, it's not. Everyone else knows you're colorblind. It's everyone else's fault. It's not, I'm sitting here lying to you, playing games with your head. It's everyone else is doing this. It's not me, it's them. And then the manipulation. Well, I'm the only one that'll tell you the truth. So the manipulation is, you're supposed to trust me more than anyone else.
More than yourself.
And more than yourself.
Yeah.
And then if you take it steps further, if let's just say the conversation kept going and you're like, I think I'm going to go to the doctor and get my eyes checked. And they're like, you know what? If you don't, we'll all know you're crazy. Well, that's the intimidation piece. That's the my way or else. Believe my narrative or else. And the or else doesn't have to be physical violence. It may be physical violence, but it doesn't have to be. It could simply be the threat of silent treatment or canceling all of their plans with you because they're just too mad at you to hang out with you, or taking away your allowance money, or taking it out on your child, or kicking the dog, or refusing to feed the cats while you're gone for the weekend out of petty retaliation. Anything that you know where there's going to be a price to be paid for you actually aligning with what you know to be true and right and real is an intimidation piece. And all of these are signs of an abusive relationship dynamic. They are the tools every abuser uses, whether it is parent-child abuse or sibling abuse or an abusive church environment or an abusive workplace or an abusive friendship circle or an abusive romantic partner.
Yeah, very well explained.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Well, welcome back to the show. Gosh, it's been so long. It's been a couple of years, I think.
Yeah, because it was earlier.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because all I did on Seasons of Healing was pull that out of your other podcasts, because we did 5 podcasts with the police departments of Gilbert and Mesa. And so I used that as a so people understood that how important safety was.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And then we did podcasts on safety planning after that. So anyway, great to have you back. Okay, so blame shifting is another way to describe what gaslighting is. It is a form of emotional abuse. Blame shifting works because it gets our focus off the real topic at hand. Can you give an example of this?
Yes. So blame shifting is also called deflection. And that is anything where I've actually done something, but I make you believe it's because of something else. Now, I have kids who have all gone through their major sci-fi Star Wars kind of phase. So anyone who has a kid who likes Star Wars or just any sci-fi tech kind of thing, if you've got boys and some girls, because my kids are both into it, my son and my daughter, both of them are into it. I define or illustrate deflection as being like a force shield. So if I have a shield and I can hold it up in front of me and it has a repellent force field, then anything that comes at me as a result of my actions, it's just going to slide off one side or the other, and I just bounce it back away from myself. So it's not my fault, it's their fault. It's not my fault, it's the circumstances' fault. It's not my fault, it's the cat's fault. It's not my fault, it's my childhood trauma's fault. It's not my fault. Here's a common deflecting phrase is, well, if you or they or he or she or it hadn't done that, I would never have. For example, if the cat would have just stopped meowing, I wouldn't have kicked it. No, you chose to kick the cat. You didn't kick the cat because the cat wouldn't stop meowing. You kicked the cat. That is it.
Right.
With that kind of deflection, so you have that force field shield, everything bad slides off of me and onto anything or anyone else around me. One way that we hear this often in abusive relationships is the approach that it was the fault of my childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have that kind of blame shifting or deflection, it can actually be used to activate a sense of compassion.
Yep.
And sympathy in the victim. Because let's say you have a physically violent partner. And for the sake of illustration, I'm going to say the physically violent partner is the guy. And you have the female partner who has just been assaulted or terrified, whether or not it was actually assault. She's scared. It's gotten out of hand. We are dealing with domestic violence, but she's not aware of it yet. So she's scared. She's triggered. Her nervous system is dysregulated. He starts crying, says he's so sorry, and then says, I never told anybody this, but here's why I do that. When I was 4 years old, my father picked me up and threw me when he was angry at me one day. And I watched him treat my siblings and my mom that way, and I've just never gotten over it. So when I get angry, I just can't control myself. Now, in the mind of his female partner, she is not thinking about the fact that a grown man just acted in a very scary, physically threatening and violent way to her. She's still dysregulated by it, but he has activated her sense of caregiving and compassion. And now she's thinking of that terrified little 4-year-old boy who was being mistreated by a big grown-up in his life. And she's thinking, oh my goodness, that must have been terrifying for you. And she's comforting him.
Yeah.
She feels bad for him. Now, this makes her feel guilty for setting any boundaries with him at all.
Right.
Yeah, they play on that.
Because his parents or something really bad happened to him, or his ex-girlfriend was so crazy, or this terrible thing happened when he was a teenager, or he was abandoned as a toddler. Whatever it is, I don't care what it is. He is blame shifting to what is probably, in many cases, very legitimate, harmful things that happened to him. Now, unless he's just a sociopathic liar and he's just inventing all of this stuff, which can also happen. But let's just say all of those things actually did happen to him. That's horrifying for terrible things like that to happen to a child. And it is his job as an adult to get therapy.
Yeah.
Right.
And to take responsibility for the actions he makes now.
Yeah.
So this is one of those, it's not either or, it is both and. It is both horrifying that you went through those things, and you may not treat me this way. I will not be treated this way. I will not stay in a relationship where I am treated this way. You need help.
Right.
So both things can be true, but that blame shifting, that gaslighting is so often, especially in emotionally, psychologically, and physically violent or abusive relationships, it is weaponized to make the victim feel like they need to be the caregiver and the comforter and the fixer. And so then the victim feels that if they leave, they are abandoning the violent or abusive partner to their trauma.
Yeah.
And so they stay.
I've noticed that a lot too. I mean, my ex did that to me too, but as I help abuse victims, I notice they'll always go back to, but they were abused when they were young. They'll start talking and they'll go through that. And I've said, that's no excuse for them hitting you.
Right.
Whatever they did.
So the most loving thing you can do is remove yourself from allowing them to continue perpetrating harm. and deepening those habit grooves against you, and insist that if you're going to be in relationship with them, they have to get help. And then if they don't, then they have made their choice and you make yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how does gaslighting begin in a relationship? I just watched the movie that term was coined from, which I think I saw it first like 5 years ago, but it's so subtle in the beginning, but I spotted it at the very beginning just because the actors did a really good job of portraying, the whole thing. But how would it begin because it's not something you notice right away. It takes a while.
Yeah, the average person, especially if you already have any sense of self-doubt or any sense of feeling like, oh, well, I need to please, if you're a people pleaser at all, is going to be easily able to fall prey to gaslighting. And it almost always begins very, very subtly.
Mm-hmm.
It's those tiny little things where the other person is not taking full 100% responsibility for themselves, while leaving, this is the key corollary to that on the flip side, while leaving full 100% responsibility of you to you. So they hold themselves, it's a healthy relationship, to full accountability and responsibility and truth telling about, I'll take responsibility for whatever I've done. And they give you 100% freedom without controlling you at all.
Yeah.
So that's a healthy relationship. Let me just make that clear. That's not a gaslighting relationship.
Right.
That's a healthy relationship. So, but pretty much all of us who are human, which is probably everybody listening to this podcast, grew up in some kind of situation and have had some kind of interactions where we have been influenced to want to make people happy, or to want to believe people and believe the best. Or we've had religious beliefs that have reiterated to us that peacekeeping, even at the expense of actual truth, is the Christ-like thing to do.
Right.
Or we have been told that because of your gender, you either have all of the power or none of the power in the relationship. So most of us haven't gotten to adulthood without having some kind of background or history that makes us prone to either gaslighting or being gaslit. And when it starts very small, it's possible that it may feel just like how we were raised. It may feel very familiar because that is what's normal to us. Or if you're naive or extremely trusting or just madly in love, then you dismiss the little inconsistencies that you see in the other person as just being a one-off. And your thought is, well, I'm not perfect either, right?
Right.
Everyone makes mistakes, and that is true. But especially in the faith familiar audience, we are often taught, it's drilled into us, that if you look at the pattern, then you're digging up the past and you're not being forgiving. So then we treat every single thing as they escalate as a one-off instead of zooming out and looking at the pattern. And abuse is not, same with gaslighting, it doesn't happen in isolation from each other. These things happen in patterns. So gaslighting is not an isolated event. It's going to happen over and over again once you start paying attention. Abuse is not an isolated event. It's a system of using your power or influence over another person to their harm.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
Things can happen that are a crime, but they are not an abusive system. Let's say a one-time carjacking or a sexual assault. Those are crimes. They are violent. They are traumatizing, but it is not abuse.
Right.
In the sense of being an abusive relational system, an abusive relationship dynamic. So getting that clear is super important. Gaslighting doesn't happen in a vacuum. It is a pattern of behavior.
That ties in with the next question.
Okay. Yeah. So is gaslighting ever unintentional?
I think it can be. It's never okay. And the intention doesn't really matter because impact trumps intention every time.
Yeah. Maybe
But
somebody that's kind of losing their mind that they're telling you something and you're like, no, that's not the way it happened. Is it possible that they could just have a bad memory? Like, that's the only thing I could think of.
if a person is humble and truthful and they have a bad memory, then they're going to be likely to say, you know what, maybe I don't remember it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible. I forget things a lot because they're going to be worried more about being factual and precise and honest and truthful than they are about being right. So there's a couple of things I want to address with this question. And one is, if you have been raised in an environment where your family culture or your social culture or your religious culture tells you that it's okay to make other people doubt themselves. I mean, some people will hate me for this, but some religious infrastructures actually evangelize based on the principle of gaslighting.
Mm-hmm.
And in those infrastructures, whether it's family or church or culture, people who are immersed in that may not realize how much harm they're doing. They may not overtly be intending to deceive other people. It's just in their air and in their water.
Okay.
That doesn't make it less harmful or less deceitful or less abusive. It just means this very unhealthy, toxic way of being has become normalized in this subset of people. Another time that it might feel like someone is gaslighting would be if someone is struggling with dementia.
Okay.
Let's say you have a significant mental health problem like Alzheimer's or dementia. You genuinely do not remember things that have happened. You think that someone is someone else. You think that you went to the store yesterday. You didn't. It was 2 weeks ago. And you have a brain problem. This is not abusive.
Okay.
This is an illness. And when someone has dementia or an Alzheimer's problem, they are losing their memory. That should not be treated as abusive. It should be treated with incredible compassion, assuming this is an otherwise truthful, open, honest, caring person who is genuinely losing their capacity for memory. And we would never want to lump these two in with actual twisting of facts.
Right.
So lots of compassion and kindness from caregivers or family for someone who's in that painful situation. Outside of that, when you have it baked into the culture, it is still harmful. It is still a culture of deception. It is still a culture of crazy making, and it is still damaging and destructive, even if everyone's doing it in your subcircle. And in intimate relationships, intimate partner relationships, barring dementia, the person who is gaslighting, it's safe to conclude that they are doing it intentionally. It may have become a habit for them, but they are doing it for the intentional purpose of getting themselves off the hook or dodging the truth.
Yeah.
They may not be thinking, I'm going to make them feel crazy in every moment.
Mm-hmm.
It is a way of interacting that works for them. So they keep doing it. Why? Because it works for them, because their goal is to not be held accountable or to have the power over someone else to be able to play with their mind. They get a thrill off of it, or it keeps them from being found out because of the betrayal trauma, or I mean, not trauma, but the deceptive sexuality that they're practicing, or their other secrets, or whatever else it is. There's something in it for them. So even if they've become habituated to this interaction, it's still intentional.
Yeah, it's definitely a way of feeling. It's controlling.
Yes.
It's controlling another person.
Yeah.
What is hoovering?
So hoovering is actually named after the old Hoover vacuum cleaner. It's kind of an abuse awareness slang term for when you try to leave or you're trying to extricate yourself and the abusive partner tries to suck you back in. other terms for that you may have heard would be like love bombing or future faking, where they make all of these promises. They swear that they've changed. They swear it's never going to be like this again. Whatever it takes that you've actually wanted, the things you've asked for over and over and over again, all of a sudden they're pouring those out on you. And as soon as you're back in, it's going to go away. That's hoovering.
Yeah, that happens. So
yes.
I think mine tried to change for a few years, but it just never changed. The change was never permanent. Or maybe he never changed and he was just hiding it from me. I have no idea. Right.
So how does gaslighting change a victim?
Oh man. So often I can spot signs of gaslighting from the victim's behavior before I've ever met the abuser. So a victim that used to be confident now doubts themselves all the time.
Yeah.
They're starting to say sorry all the time. They make a comment and then apologize for it. They have a need and then apologize for it. They ask a question and then apologize for it or take it back or walk it down, somehow walk it back. They begin to feel like they can't trust themselves. Their own perception, they second guess it. Their own gut, their intuition, they doubt it all the time. They feel like they're not a reliable witness to what is true.
That's me, 100%.
It may have happened in front of you. You may have heard it. You may have tasted it. You may have felt it. It may have been touching you, but you aren't certain if that's really what it was. And so you become more and more brain fogged.
Yeah.
And that trauma fog, and I even see it. I had one of my coaching clients tell me just this morning that they have recognized that they no longer are missing phone charge cords and they're not dropping their phone or their keys. And they said, is that a thing? I said, well, when you are constantly having your reality assaulted, when there is dissonance between what you are told is happening and what you are experiencing is happening, it's not unusual to become more clumsy, more forgetful. You start misplacing things. And because you've been taught to not trust yourself, you can't remember where you put it.
Wow.
Yeah.
You drop things, you trip over things. And now, if someone has always been clumsy or whatever, that I'm not saying that starts this if you've always been that way. But if you were never that way before, and now you see these things happening, it's likely because you're in the traumatic stress of a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had a coach when I first got out of the abusive marriage, and I just could not, I just apologized. I still do it, but I was apologizing with everything. I'm sorry. They were like, stop saying you're sorry. And then it made me realize that was a problem, but I had become so much like that. And it was funny because I got pulled over by a police officer yesterday, and all I just kept saying was, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I probably said it, I don't know how many times before he left. He was probably like, he gave me just a warning and left. I think he was sick of hearing me say it. She says, I'm sorry one more time. I'm just driving off, like drove away. So I have gotten a lot better and I don't do it as much, but it does cause severe brain fog. And I think that first podcast we did with you, I had such bad brain fog. It took me, and you talked about that. It took a couple years for my brain to come back and to clear.
Yeah.
I can actually have a conversation and listen to what you're saying and understand what you're saying. Because the first podcast, I was like, wow, this is way over my head. I don't understand anything she's saying. So big difference when you heal, like.
Yeah. It's tremendous. I tell my coaching clients who are struggling with that, only apologize for sin. One of my mentors told me that 8 years ago or so when I was compulsively apologizing. And he said, did you do something actually wrong? I said, no, I just didn't express it the way. He's like, stop it.
Yeah, we're just so used to saying that.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Gaslight movie? It's from like 1944. It's black and white, but.
Yeah, I have seen parts of it. I have never actually sat and watched the whole thing through. I've said that I'm going to for a decade.
Yeah. Well, I watched it again this weekend just because I wanted to watch it again. I bought it, when I saw it the first time. And it just makes you so mad because it's so subtle and you see it happening, but you can see her doubting herself. I think she won an Oscar. Ingrid Bergman plays the role of the wife, and she won an Oscar for it because she does a great job of just, you just see that. And it's just so relatable because I remember feeling that way too. It just,
oh yeah,
like you're describing, it's crazy making. You're like, you can tell she's like just doubting herself.
I was supposed to watch it and I forgot. So
Yeah,
I
you can
still
still
have to
watch
watch.
it.
Yeah, I do want to watch that.
Yeah, it's good, I think. So Dr. Ramani, I've seen several of her YouTube videos, and when I was researching this, she has a lot of YouTube videos on gaslighting, and she said gaslighting is emotional abuse because they manipulate reality, like you're saying, and distort someone's reality. You're abusing and playing with their mind. You were saying that too, and I just talked about the movie. It's just so evident if you ever get a chance to watch that movie. But she stressed the importance of holding on to your reality because she said you will feel crazy. So for me, journaling was how I learned to hold on to my reality. But can you add your advice to someone that's being gaslit, help them hold on to their reality?
To be continued. Stay tuned for next week's part 2. You don't want to miss it.
Thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there, and if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening. And until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.